The Miami sun blazed overhead, casting a shimmering heat across the tarmac at Miami International Airport, where a sleek private jet belonging to SkyLux Airlines stood ready for its passengers. The jet was a vision of luxury, its exterior a glossy black with gold trim, its interior a sanctuary of elegance with soft beige leather seats, rosewood panelling, and crystal chandeliers that cast a warm glow over the cabin. A gentle melody of jazz played through the speakers, mingling with the hum of anticipation as passengers boarded, their designer luggage gliding effortlessly behind them. This was a flight for the elite, a promise of extravagance and impeccable service, or so it seemed. Among the passengers was Maya Thompson, a 35-year-old black woman whose presence was both striking and understated. Dressed in a tailored emerald green blazer, black trousers and a silk scarf tied loosely around her neck, Maya exuded a quiet sophistication. Her braided hair was pulled into an elegant updo, and her warm brown eyes held a depth of wisdom and resolve. Maya was en route to Chicago for a high-stakes merger meeting, but no one on board knew that she was the billionaire owner of SkyLux Airlines. She preferred to travel anonymously, using these trips to observe her company's operations without the spotlight her status would bring. Maya settled into her seat near the front of the cabin, placing her sleek leather satchel under the seat and pulling out a notebook to jot down some thoughts. Her calm demeanor and lack of ostentation stood in contrast to the other passengers, many of whom were eager to display their wealth with flashy accessories and loud chatter. Maya's focus was on her work, but she couldn't help noticing the lead flight attendant, Rachel Harper, who stood near the entrance, greeting passengers with a polished smile. Rachel, a woman in her early 40s, was the epitome of professionalism on the surface. Her navy uniform was crisp, her auburn hair swept into a neat chignon, and her posture radiated authority. But there was a coldness in her green eyes, a judgmental edge that became apparent as she interacted with the passengers. For Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, an elderly white couple in their late 60s, Rachel's smile was warm and genuine. "Welcome aboard, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett," she said, her voice smooth as honey. "It's wonderful to see you again." Mrs. Bennett, holding a small knitting bag, smiled back while Mr. Bennett nodded, already flipping through a copy of Forbes magazine. But when Rachel's gaze landed on Maya, her smile faded. "Welcome aboard," she said curtly, her tone noticeably colder. Maya glanced up, offering a polite smile, but Rachel had already turned away, her attention shifting to the next passenger, a young socialite named Sophia Davis, who was busy adjusting her oversized sunglasses and snapping photos of the cabin. Rachel's warmth returned as she complimented Sophia's outfit, her voice bright and accommodating. Maya noted the contrast, but said nothing, her expression remaining calm as she returned to her notebook. The cabin buzzed with quiet activity as the passengers settled in. Sophia, the socialite, chatted loudly with her friend about her recent shopping spree in Milan, while James Carter, a businessman in his 50s, sat across the aisle from Maya, reviewing documents on his laptop with a focused expression. James was dressed in a tailored navy suit, his demeanor calm and professional, a stark contrast to Sophia's flamboyance. In the galley, a junior flight attendant named Lily Evans prepared trays of sparkling water, her movements quick but nervous. Lily, in her mid-20s, was new to SkyLux and eager to make a good impression, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel's strict oversight would make this flight challenging. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Rachel moved through the cabin, ensuring everything was in order. She stopped by the Bennetts, offering them a tray of drinks with a bright smile. "Can I get you anything else before we depart?" she asked, her tone warm. Mrs. Bennett shook her head, already absorbed in her knitting, while Mr. Bennett requested a tea, which Rachel promptly fetched. But when she passed Maya, Rachel's demeanor shifted. She glanced at Maya's satchel with a thin-lipped frown, offering no drink or courtesy, and walked on without a word. Maya's eyes followed her for a moment, a flicker of awareness in her gaze, but she remained silent, her composure unshaken.
The jet's engines roared softly as it taxied down the runway, the cabin settling into a quiet rhythm. Passengers sipped their drinks, some flipping through luxury magazines, others gazing out the windows at the receding Miami skyline. Maya, however, remained focused on her notebook, her pen moving swiftly as she outlined her strategy for the upcoming merger. She was deep in thought when Rachel approached her, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. "Excuse me, ma'am," Rachel said, her voice polite but laced with condescension. "I believe you're in the wrong section." Maya looked up, her expression calm but curious. "I'm sorry," she replied, her tone even. Rachel's smile was tight, her eyes narrowing slightly. "This section is reserved for our diamond tier passengers," she said, her words sharp. "I think you'd be more comfortable in the back." Maya tilted her head, her gaze steady. "I believe this is my seat," she said simply, reaching into her blazer pocket to pull out her boarding pass. She handed it to Rachel, who barely glanced at it before handing it back. "I don't need to see that," Rachel snapped, her tone growing sharper. "I know who belongs here and who doesn't." The exchange caught the attention of nearby passengers. Sophia, the socialite, leaned forward, her curiosity piqued, while James, the businessman, frowned slightly, sensing the tension. "I suggest you double-check the passenger list," Maya said, her voice still calm but firm. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Rachel's eyebrows arched, her irritation barely concealed. "I don't need to check anything," she said, her voice loud enough for others to hear. "If you don't move to the back of the plane, I'll have to call security." The cabin grew quieter, the tension thickening as passengers exchanged glances. Sophia whispered to her friend, "She's probably trying to sneak into first class," while James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his frown deepening. Maya remained composed, her hands resting calmly in her lap. "Call whoever you need to," she said, her tone unwavering. "But I'm not moving." Rachel's face flushed with frustration, and she turned to Lily, the junior flight attendant who stood nearby, watching nervously. "Lily, escort her to the back now," Rachel ordered, her voice sharp. Lily hesitated, her eyes darting between Maya and Rachel. She wanted to speak up, to suggest checking the passenger list as Maya had requested, but Rachel's glare silenced her. Reluctantly, Lily stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mom, if you could please—" Maya cut her off gently, her gaze still fixed on Rachel. "You might want to think carefully about what you're doing," she said softly, her words carrying a weight that Rachel dismissed with a scoff. "I know exactly what I'm doing," Rachel retorted, gesturing toward the back of the plane. "Now get up." The passengers watched in stunned silence, the tension crackling in the air. Maya leaned back slightly, her expression unchanged. "You shouldn't make assumptions about people," she said quietly, her words a subtle warning that Rachel ignored. Rachel's smirk widened. "And you shouldn't be in seats you didn't pay for," she shot back, her voice dripping with disdain. The insult hung in the air, and Maya's eyes narrowed slightly, though her composure remained intact. She reached for her phone, typing something quickly before setting it back on the armrest. "You're making a mistake," she said simply, her words hanging in the air like a quiet promise. Rachel didn't listen, gesturing again for Lily to act. Lily stepped closer, her hesitation palpable, as the scene continued to unfold.
The tension in the cabin was palpable as Rachel stood over Maya, her arms crossed and her frustration mounting. Maya remained seated, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to Rachel's growing agitation. The passengers watched with bated breath, some whispering among themselves, others pretending not to notice. Sophia, the socialite, leaned towards her friend, her voice loud enough for others to hear. "She's probably trying to get a free upgrade," she said, her tone dripping with judgment. Rachel seized on the comment, her smirk returning. "That's exactly what it looks like," she said, turning to the other passengers as if rallying support. "We have rules for a reason. Some people just don't respect them." Maya didn't respond to the insults or the murmurs around her. Instead, she kept her gaze steady on Rachel, her composure a quiet defiance that spoke louder than words. Lily, still standing nearby, hesitated, then took a step toward the passenger list, clipped near the galley. Her fingers trembled as she scanned the names, hoping to find something that would resolve the situation. But before she could say anything, Rachel snapped, "Lily, what are you doing?" Lily turned, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was just checking." Rachel cut her off, her tone sharp. "I've got this under control. You don't need to get involved." Lily stepped back, her face flushing with embarrassment, torn between doing what was right and the fear of losing her job. James, the businessman across the aisle, leaned forward, his expression concerned. "Excuse me," he said gently, addressing Maya. "Is everything all right?" Maya turned to him, her expression softening. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied, her voice steady but grateful for the small act of kindness. Before James could say more, Rachel interjected, her tone accusing. "Sir, I'd appreciate it if you didn't encourage the disturbance," she said, turning back to Maya. "You're causing a scene." James frowned, his voice calm but firm. "From where I'm sitting, you're the one making a scene," he said, his words a subtle rebuke that made Rachel's face flush with anger. "I've had enough of this," Rachel snapped, pointing a finger at Maya. "Either you move, or I'll make sure you're escorted off this plane." Maya met her gaze without flinching. "You can try," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority that seemed to unnerve Rachel. The flight attendant's frustration boiled over, her voice shaking as she leaned closer. "Why don't you just admit you're in the wrong seat and stop wasting everyone's time?" As she hissed. Maya remained silent, her calmness only fueling Rachel's anger. Rachel turned away, her movements brisk as she carried out her other duties, her heels clicking softly on the carpet. She carried a tray of sparkling water, her demeanor professional, but her expression tight with irritation. Maya sat quietly, her attention now on a book in her hands, though she remained aware of Rachel's every move. Passengers chatted softly, the atmosphere calm, until Rachel's subtle hostility resurfaced. Maya had been waiting patiently for a drink, watching as Rachel served the Bennets first, then moved to others in the back. Rachel, however, made no effort to acknowledge Maya, the tray nearly empty when Maya finally spoke, her tone gentle. "Excuse me, could I have some water, please?" Rachel paused, glancing at Maya with a dismissive look. "I'll get to you when I can," she said curtly, walking past without another word. Maya's calm gaze followed Rachel's retreating figure, but she remained silent, her patience unwavering. Minutes passed, and Maya shifted in her seat, stretching one leg slightly into the aisle to find a more comfortable position. Rachel returned, tray in hand, her sharp eyes catching the small adjustment. Instead of asking Maya to move her leg, Rachel deliberately changed her path. In an instant, her foot struck Maya's leg, the tray tilted, and the glasses of water tumbled forward, splashing onto Maya's lap and the floor. Rachel gasped theatrically, her voice sharp and loud. "Watch where you're putting your legs! You've caused a mess!" Passengers turned their heads, startled by the commotion. Maya looked up, startled but composed, her hands brushing at the water on her trousers. "But you walked into my leg," she said calmly, her voice steady. Rachel's face flushed with anger, and she stepped closer, her frustration boiling over. "You think you can talk to me like that?" she hissed, her voice sharp. And then, in a shocking moment, unable to contain herself, Rachel raised her hand and slapped Maya across the face. The sound echoed through the cabin like a thunderclap, gasps rippling through the passengers. James stood halfway, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. Lily's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Even Sophia, the socialite, appeared taken aback, her previous smirk replaced by unease. Maya slowly straightened, her hand resting calmly on her lap, her expression unchanged. Her gaze locked onto Rachel, steady and unyielding as the cabin fell silent, the tension palpable. Maya's cheek burned from the slap, but her expression remained composed, her warm brown eyes fixed on Rachel with a weight that made the flight attendant hesitate for the first time. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," Maya said quietly, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. The passengers watched in stunned silence, their eyes darting between Maya and Rachel, unsure of what would happen next. Rachel faltered for a moment, her confidence shaken by Maya's unyielding composure, but she quickly recovered, scoffing loudly. "Regret it?" she sneered. "What are you going to do? Call the police?" Maya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for her phone, her movements deliberate, and typed something quickly before setting it back on the armrest. "You'll find out soon enough," she said softly, her words carrying a quiet authority that deepened Rachel's unease. From the corner of the cabin, Lily watched the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and determination. She had been quietly observing Rachel's behavior all day, her discomfort growing with every passing moment. Now, she knew she couldn't stay silent any longer. Discreetly, Lily stepped away from the commotion and pulled out her phone, dialing a number with trembling fingers. When the call connected, her voice was hushed but firm. "It's Lily," she said. "We have a situation on the plane." Rachel, oblivious to the call, stood with her arms crossed, her anger simmering but her authority waning. Passengers continued to watch, their eyes fixed on Maya, who remained seated, her posture steady despite the water dripping onto her clothing. She looked at Rachel, her voice calm but firm. "All you had to do was treat me with respect," she said. "But you failed because of your prejudice, thinking I don't belong here just because of how you feel." Rachel's irritation deepened, her grip on the tray tightening as she leaned closer, her tone mocking. "Respect? Maybe you should earn it first. People like you don't deserve my respect." The tension in the cabin was palpable, passengers exchanging glances, some shifting in their seats, unsure of how to react. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly, her calm demeanor unbroken. "You shouldn't have said that," she said, her voice sharp but firm, her words carrying an unspoken weight that left everyone wondering what would happen next. Rachel folded her arms, her anger still simmering. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "I've been more than patient with you." "Maybe now you'll understand that actions have consequences." Maya's gaze didn't waver. "You're right," she said softly, her words deliberate. "Actions do have consequences, and you're about to find out just how true that is." For a moment Rachel faltered, something in Maya's tone sending a chill down her spine, but she quickly pushed the feeling aside. "I'm not afraid of your empty threats," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand, but deep inside unease began to creep in. The looks from the passengers, the horrified expression on Lily's face and Maya's quiet composure all made Rachel feel as though the walls were closing in. Minutes later the sound of footsteps came from the front of the cabin. The cockpit door opened and the pilot stepped out, his face pale and his expression tight. He scanned the room briefly before walking directly toward Rachel, his movements quick and deliberate. Rachel turned to him, her irritation evident. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone sharp. The pilot stopped in front of her, his posture tense. "You need to step aside," he said, his voice firm but laced with discomfort. Rachel frowned, her confusion evident. "Excuse me?" she said, crossing her arms. "Why would I need to step aside? I'm handling this." The pilot's gaze flicked to Maya, then back to Rachel. "I just received a call from management," he said plainly. "The owner of the plane is on board, and she's Miss Thompson here." He pointed to Maya, his words hitting the room like a thunderclap. The cabin erupted into gasps and murmurs. Sophia audibly inhaled, her eyes widening as she looked between Maya and Rachel. "She owns the plane?" she whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. James nodded knowingly, his expression calm. "I had a feeling," he muttered under his breath as though the revelation confirmed his suspicions. Rachel stared at the pilot, her face turning an alarming shade of red. "That can't be true," she stammered, her voice losing its usual sharpness. "Or there must be some mistake." The pilot shook his head, his tone firm. "There's no mistake, Miss Harper. Miss Thompson is the owner of SkyLux Airlines." The captain's voice came over the intercom, adding to the tension. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will be making an unscheduled landing. Please remain seated and prepare for descent." Passengers murmured in confusion, but Maya's expression remained serene, her gaze fixed on Rachel, who was now visibly unraveling. The plane touched down smoothly at a private airstrip, and moments later a sleek silver SUV pulled up directly to the tarmac. The doors opened, and two sharply dressed assistants stepped out, their movements brisk and purposeful. They ascended the plane's steps with quiet authority, their presence commanding attention. The moment they entered the cabin, one of them spoke, their voice respectful. "Miss Thompson, everything is ready for your review," they said, their tone deferential. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Rachel froze, her face draining of colour as the realization hit her like a wave. "Miss Thompson," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. The assistants ignored her, their focus entirely on Maya. "Do you need anything before we proceed?" one of them asked. Maya stood slowly, her movements graceful and deliberate. She adjusted her blazer, her calm demeanor radiating power. The passengers watched in stunned silence as Maya finally spoke, her voice steady and commanding. "I'm Maya Thompson," she began, her gaze sweeping across the cabin. "I'm the owner of this plane, and I'm also the owner of SkyLux Airlines." Rachel's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The confident, condescending flight attendant was now a pale shadow of herself, her earlier bravado replaced by sheer panic. Maya turned her attention to Rachel, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Rachel, your behavior today has been nothing short of disgraceful," she said, her words cutting through the silence. "You've humiliated yourself, mistreated a passenger, and tarnished the reputation of this airline." Rachel stammered, her voice trembling. I didn't know," she said, her eyes darting around the cabin, searching for support. Maya held up a hand, silencing her. "You didn't know because you didn't bother to treat me with the respect that every passenger deserves," she said firmly. "Instead, you made assumptions, you acted with prejudice, and you escalated a situation that could have been handled with basic decency." The passengers nodded in agreement, their earlier silence giving way to murmurs of support. James's face glowed with admiration, while Mr. Bennet folded his magazine, giving Maya an approving nod. "There's no mistake in your actions, Rachel," Maya continued. her tone quiet yet authoritative. "While you were busy judging me, you failed to do your job. Your job is to treat every passenger with respect, no matter who they are or what you assume about them. And now there are consequences." Rachel's hands clenched at her sides, her mind racing. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, but the words wouldn't come. She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her, and for the first time her confidence faltered completely. Maya gestured to the pilot. "I want this addressed immediately," she said, "and I want to ensure that this doesn't happen again to anyone." The pilot nodded, his demeanor professional. "Understood, Miss Thompson," he said. Rachel took a step back, her mind swirling with panic. She looked toward the exit, her instincts screaming at her to leave before things got worse, but the pilot stepped in her path, his expression firm. "You're not going anywhere," he said. Maya's gaze didn't waver. "Rachel, your actions today have proven that you are unfit for this position," she said. "Effective immediately, you are fired." The words hung in the air like a final verdict. Rachel's face crumpled, and she took a step back, her confidence completely shattered. "Please, Miss Thompson," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean—" Maya's expression hardened. "You didn't mean to get caught," she said coldly, "but you did, and now you'll face the consequences." At that moment, 2 uniformed police officers boarded the plane, their presence causing a wave of murmurs among the passengers. Rachel's face turned ashen as they approached. "Miss Thompson," one of the officers said respectfully, "we received your report. Are you pressing charges?" Maya's gaze didn't waver. "Yes," she said firmly. "This individual assaulted me in front of multiple witnesses. I expect her to be held accountable." Rachel gasped, taking a step back. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding," she cried, her voice desperate. "I didn't mean to—" The officer stepped forward, producing a pair of handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault," he said. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Rachel's breathing quickened as she realized there was no way out. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to protest. "Please, Miss Thompson, I'm sorry," she sobbed. Maya's expression remained impassive. "Your apology means nothing without accountability," she said quietly. "You made your choices. Now you'll face the consequences." Passengers watched in stunned silence as Rachel was escorted off the plane in handcuffs, her once dominant presence reduced to a defeated figure. The earlier tension in the cabin gave way to a sense of relief and admiration. Maya turned back to the passengers, her voice steady as she addressed them. "To everyone here, I apologize for what you had to witness today," she said. "This is not the standard of service I expect on my planes. Moving forward, we will ensure that every passenger is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve." The cabin erupted into applause, passengers clapping enthusiastically. Mr. Bennett gave a small cheer, while Mrs. Bennett set her knitting aside to clap politely. Maya turned to Lily, the junior flight attendant, who had quietly supported her throughout the ordeal. "Lily," Maya said, her tone softening, "I noticed your professionalism today. Thank you for stepping up when it mattered. You'll be hearing from my office about a promotion." Lily's eyes widened and she nodded quickly, her face lighting up with gratitude. "Thank you, Miss Thompson," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. Maya stepped toward the exit, her assistants following closely behind. The plane's atmosphere had shifted completely, the earlier tension replaced by a sense of justice and hope. As Maya descended the steps to the tarmac, the fresh air greeted her, and the silver SUV waited patiently, its driver holding the door open. Her assistants briefed her on her next meeting, but Maya's thoughts lingered on the events of the day. She knew this incident was not just about her. It was about changing a system that allowed prejudice and assumptions to thrive. In the weeks that followed, Maya implemented sweeping changes across SkyLux Airlines. She announced a company-wide initiative to retrain all staff on anti-discrimination and customer service standards, ensuring that every passenger, regardless of background, would be treated with respect. The training program, developed by diversity experts, became a permanent part of SkyLux's operations, setting a new standard for the industry. Maya also established a transparent complaint system, encouraging passengers to report any mistreatment without fear of retaliation. Rachel, meanwhile, faced the full consequences of her actions. Her arrest for assault made headlines, and her career in the airline industry was effectively over. Social media buzzed with discussions about the incident, with hashtags like #DignityForAll and #Maya Thompson trending for days. Maya's leadership and commitment to change inspired others to reflect on their own behavior, sparking a broader conversation about equality and accountability. 3 months after the incident, Maya stood on a stage at a national conference for diversity in business, her presence commanding the room. The audience, a mix of industry leaders and activists, listened intently as she shared her story. "Respect is a right, not a privilege," Maya said, her voice clear and resolute. "Everyone deserves dignity, no matter how they look, where they come from, or what others assume about them. True leadership is about setting that standard and ensuring it's upheld." The crowd erupted into applause. Inspired by Maya's words and her actions, her story had gone viral, reaching millions through news outlets and social media, and she had become a symbol of resilience and justice. Maya used her platform to launch the SkyLux Equality Initiative, a program aimed at educating young people about their rights as consumers and encouraging them to stand up against discrimination. The initiative partnered with schools and community organizations, reaching thousands of students across the country. Back at SkyLux Airlines, the changes Maya implemented had a lasting impact. Passenger satisfaction scores soared, and the airline became known not just for its luxury, but for its commitment to equality. Employees like Lily, who had been promoted to a managerial role, led the charge in creating a more inclusive culture, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Maya boarded another flight a few weeks later, this time greeted by a different crew. The energy was warm, welcoming, and professional. The lead flight attendant greeted her with a genuine smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Thompson," she said. "It's an honor to have you." Maya returned the smile as she settled into her seat, the atmosphere lighter, the service impeccable. As she gazed out the window, watching the runway blur into the sky, a sense of peace washed over her. She knew that her actions had turned an injustice into a lesson, one that would ripple far beyond that single flight. 6 months after the incident, SkyLux Airlines was thriving, its reputation transformed by Maya's leadership. The toxic culture that had once allowed prejudice to fester was replaced by a commitment to respect and equality. Independent audits confirmed that passengers of all backgrounds reported equal treatment, a milestone that set SkyLux apart in the industry. Maya's story continued to inspire, with people across the world sharing their own experiences of standing up against injustice. In a public statement, Maya spoke directly to her audience, her words resonating far beyond the confines of the airline industry. "Luxury isn't about appearances," she said in a heartfelt video that quickly went viral. "It's about the experience we create for everyone. True success is measured not by what you can afford, but by how you treat others." Her message sparked conversations across social media, with people applauding her vision and commitment to change. Maya's journey was a testament to the power of resilience and leadership. She had turned a moment of humiliation into a movement for equality, proving that even in the face of adversity, one person's actions can create a ripple effect of change. As she continued to lead SkyLux Airlines, Maya remained committed to her mission, knowing that the most powerful victories weren't about winning. They were about inspiring others to demand the respect they deserve. The jet soared higher into the clouds, the engines humming softly as it moved toward its destination. Maya, seated at the helm of her vision, felt a quiet triumph that no turbulence could ever shake. Her story was a reminder that justice, when paired with compassion and action, could change the world, one flight at a time. If Maya's story inspired you, if you believe in the power of standing up for what's right, then hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with everyone you know. Comment dignity below and let us know where you're watching from. Together we can build a world where everyone is treated with the dignity they deserve. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.